everyone. Welcome to our fall release webinar. And thanks a lot for making the time to join us. This is a repeat of the original webinar we had last week, and we're glad you could join us if you weren't able to make that webinar. Okay, my name is Emeka Ajoku. I'm responsible for product management at Tidemark, and I'll walk you through the release content, and then we'll have a demo at the end to give you a good sense of what's coming in the release. So the good news is this is one of our biggest releases to date. We're really excited about it. It's packed full with a lot of capabilities to help you modernize the way you do finance, help you get your job done and hit your goals. It's really a big milestone for us in our journey towards helping you do those things. We have some key things that are coming in. I just wanted to highlight a couple of them quickly before we went into the main content. So the first thing is we've delivered key innovations in the area of benchmarking and predictive forecasting that's based on machine learning to help you pull in information from outside the four walls of your organization, pull in competitive information and use predictive learning to machine learning to make sense of that data and use that in the context of your planning and budgeting cycles. And we'll demo that shortly for you to see how that all comes together. We've also put in some major enhancements for modeling. So it's something we call qualified references to help you make it really easy to model out your business within Tidemark using simple metric math and in a very neat way to actually represent what's happening out there in your business within the Tidemark system so you can do what-if analysis in a much easier and simpler way. The other update we've made is significant changes to Surf Alliance just to make it easier for you to configure your Tidemark environment to suit your business needs. We've moved a lot of those capabilities to configure the software to the front end, made it easy for you to do it either using search or using your mouse to click through and make updates and make changes. And you'll see as we also do the demo, we have an all-new user experience that's engaging. It's really different from what it used to be before, and it makes it easier to use. It's much nicer, it looks better, and it helps you get to where you want to get to really fast and get your work done within Tidemark. So with that, we'll go in. But before we go into the details, especially for those of you who are on the webinar who may not have worked with us before, just wanted to take a quick minute to touch on our vision at Tidemark. So really broadly, our aim is to help you with the tools that will modernize the way you approach finance in your organization. So we think about it in these four pillars, and I'll touch on them really quickly. So the first piece, let me talk about the Beyond GL pillar. So here, we believe that for you to actually do finance in this modern age where there's a ton of data that's being generated within your organization, operational data, for example, you need to have all those in the same system right by your side while you're doing your planning or your budgeting cycles. You need that data so that you can make informed decisions. You shouldn't have to go to a different system to look at operational data. We want to have you have your operational data, your finance data, your GL data all in one place and give you the tools you need to get insights from that data and make decisions that impact your organization going forward. And with that same line of thought, if you look at this pillar where we call it benchmarking, we also believe you should look beyond the four walls of your company and look at information that's outside there in the marketplace. So be it market data, be it competitive data, if there are proprietary sources in your industry that make those available, you should be able to pull those in and use them in the context of your planning cycle. Or be it macroeconomic data like GDP or unemployment data. If there is any piece of information out there that's relevant to your business, there should be a way for you what we believe, and that's what we build capabilities to enable you to do that. So with all that data, you've got data from your operational systems, you've got data from outside of your four walls. We believe that you need to look at tools that make it easy to make sense of such massive amounts of data. So we think the best way is to leverage the best out there in predictive forecasting technology to help you get it done. So that's this pillar here where we talk about predictive. We've got technology that's based on Spark, which is the latest out there, bakes in machine learning capabilities, takes advantage of those to look at the data that you're pulling in from these various sources to help you predict what will happen in future and use that as a basis or a starting point for your actual planning cycle. It's always good to have the tools be a starting point to give you a baseline of what's expected, and then you can use that information to inform your planning going forward. And we will demo how this all comes together in a few minutes. And then finally, if you're building your plans, or if you've built your plans and you want to communicate those, we think there should be an easy way for you to do it with engaging analytics, with engaging artifacts that you can share across your organization to draw people in and help them understand the plans you've put out and make sense of it. So we've got a lot in the platform that helps you do that. Either during the planning cycle itself, you can collaborate really easily with teams, both within the finance team or teams on the operational side, outside of finance. We make it easy for everybody to get on the platform in one place and get engaged in planning. And after doing that, we also make it really easy for you to communicate the final output of that across the organization in an easy way in that same platform. So in a nutshell, that's our vision, that's our approach, and we build technology to help you achieve that. Okay, so moving on to the fall release. So 3 key items that are headlining the release. There's a whole lot of other things which I'll touch on after that, but the 3 key items we're putting out. The first is what we call Tidemark Compete. And it's just an easy way we've put out there for you to be able to pull in information from outside of your organization, competitive and market information, and to use that within your planning and budgeting cycle. And we will demo a use case for retail, which is the first we've put out. We've put together a package that works for retail, and it uses the particular source it uses for retail would be Nielsen point of sale data from Nielsen. So that gets pulled in, and you can see how that can be used in the planning cycle of a retail organization. But just imagine how that would work also for different types of industries that have different data sources. It's the same principle. Tidemark Compete will help you pull in that data and make sense of it and use it within your planning cycle. And we'll be showing you a demo of that shortly. So the second piece is adding even more machine learning capabilities, and we will demo that also for you. We will demo that in context of the retail Compete app. So you'll see how the data that's been pulled in, competitive data that's been pulled in, how we make sense of that using the new build-out machine learning capabilities we have, and make it useful, make it something you can work with for your planning cycle. And then the third piece is we've put together packaged processes for retail, hospitality, and insurance verticals. Our packaged processes are simply best practices and content that we've seen out there that we've put together into an app that helps you get up to speed really fast if you decide to use Tidemark. So this allows us get you up and running on Tidemark in record time relative to other vendors who would need a lot more time consultant engagement to get you up to speed. With packaged processes, it's already pre-baked, it's already predefined, and you can easily get up to speed much faster and save that cost. And we've put it out we have a number already out there for other verticals, but we're adding retail, hospitality, and insurance package processes, and we'll walk you through those also in the demo. So along with those 3 items, we have a ton of capabilities that we've built in for modeling to make it easy for the power user or the super user to have a good experience. We touched on this earlier. We've got qualified references, which is a major enhancement to our metric capabilities. It enables you represent your business in a much easier way within Tidemark using metric map and relationships between those metrics so that you can easily do what-if analysis that flows through all your drivers down to the final output. So it's really great for modeling. It makes it much easier to do modeling within Tidemark. Like I said before, we've got an all-new UI, user experience, which you'll see shortly, and it puts search front and center for your experience in Tidemark. It makes it really easy to get to different places using search without having to click around to find what you want. It's a really nice interface, and then search is central on it, which is what most apps out there are moving towards. I mean, in Google, you search to get to information really easily. we wanted you to have the same experience in Tidemark where you can use search to get to different places or even take action within Tidemark right from the search bar without having to click several times to get your job done. The other key things I want to touch on are Excel integration, which we've already got out there in the market, but we're formally putting it out to the broader base. An easy way to integrate Tidemark within Excel. If you like to work in Excel, we'll make it easy for you to exchange information seamlessly across Excel and Tidemark without having to do exports or imports. It just happens in real time at the same time. So this we have out in the market already, but we're formally announcing it as being generally available with this release. We've also got a whole number of items to make configuration and managing your instance of Tidemark really easy. So things are now much easier to configure. Everything from configuring initiatives, which is our transactional data store within Tidemark. Configuring that is much easier. Configuring things like users and user groups and data channels, applications of business methods. It's a whole new experience. And if you are a current user of Tidemark, you'll see a big difference when you get this new release and you get to try your hands in it. So with that, we'll go into the demo and Q&A session. And my colleague, Mike Dunn, will be supporting me with the demos. We'll go through a demo of Tidemark Compete with Predictive that we've packaged for retail. And then the second demo will be around the packaged processes for the hospitality and insurance verticals. And we'll take questions after that. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mike to kick off the demos.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Can you see Tidemark?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So as Emeka mentioned, I'm going to walk you through today two things. I'm going to start off with Tidemark Compete, which is our new benchmarking application that we're releasing into the market as part of our fall release. And then I'll go through our new vertical package processes for hospitality and insurance. So what we're looking at here on the screen is the new Tidemark user experience. You'll notice it looks completely different. It's a little bit cleaner. It's a little bit better use of real estate. And in addition to this cool little icon avatar in the bottom left-hand corner, that's a picture of me, you'll notice that search has taken a more prominent position in the home screen. And as Emeka mentioned, we think that search is the most intuitive way to get to where you need to go within the application, whether it's a report, whether it's creating a new report, editing a dimension, kind of doing any task or place within the application. We think search is a familiar way to do it, and that our users will like doing it that way. So to start the demo, I'm actually going to go into search and find the report that I'm looking for, which is called Key Metrics Trend. And you'll notice, when I search on Key Metrics Trend, conversations come up, different slices within different processes come up. If there were annotations, they would come up as well. And all I need to do to get to where I need to go in the application is click on the link. And in this case, it brings me to a grid that gives us a good sense of the data that we've loaded in for this Compete demo. So on the rows here, we're looking at our competitors. It's a retail example, and we are Global Retailer, which is a grocery chain. And we're looking at market share by month for ourselves as well as our competitors. We're also not just looking at market share, which is coming from Nielsen. We've also pulled in data as it relates to alcohol consumption, food consumption, and then gross domestic product from external data sources, whether it's an industry data source or in this case, government. We're kind of melding together internal and external data in one place, and we can see those data sources up here on the page edge, right? So at Nielsen, we have our GL data, which is our sales data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and so forth. And Tidemark is architected to be able to handle all of that data. So when we look at the market share, we'll notice we have actuals going through the end of 2014, but we don't have a forecast yet going out into the future. However, we do have a forecast from our external data sources, right? So based on economic data, there's a prediction on what alcohol consumption, food, and GDP will be out into the future. And then we'll see how we can use that data to do a prediction using machine learning on what the future will be there. So to start off, we can do some analysis here in Tidemark. We can do our instant visualizations on this data. We can see that Kroger's is the #1 grocery chain, kind of by a big distance. And if we focus in on ourselves, we're kind of middle of the pack, right? So we need to do something to gain market share. And the first thing we're going to do is run a correlation analysis in Tidemark to better understand how our sales correlate to these external data factors, right? So if GDP goes up or food consumption goes up, how does that correlate to how we think we're going to do? And we're going to use that to gain insights into the data and identify market opportunities. So in Tidemark, we run this via Tidemark business method. So business method is a way that we can run a calculation against the data in Tidemark and produce statistical results. So I'm going to click run, and that is going to run in the background. It's complete. And now I'll go to the next step in the process, which shows the result of that correlation. So what we're looking at here is in the rows, we're looking at all of our various markets, which are states. And in the columns, we're looking at the correlation coefficient metrics that we're correlating to. So we're correlating food buying behavior to our sales, alcohol consumption to our sales, and then GDP to our sales. And then in the last column, we have market share, so that we can see ourselves versus our competitor. So we're looking at these correlation coefficients, and what it really means is if, say, food buying goes up, how much do we go up in accordance with that metric? So for instance, if there's $1 of incremental food buying that happens next year, how much of that dollar does our business get? Because if we get a good portion of it in a certain market, we may want to pour gas on the fire there and open up more stores. Or if we're not getting a lot of that market share, maybe we do some analysis into that market and figure out why, and we do some promotions, we do some marketing, and we try and capture more market share. So those are kind of the two scenarios, and what we look at here is that we're comparing ourselves against Kroger's. So you can see that we play in certain markets that Kroger doesn't play, but if we highlight this variance, we can pretty easily see the difference between ourselves and Kroger's, and what I can do is sort it to find the biggest variance. So these markets with the biggest variance are markets in which we play and Kroger's doesn't, but if I sort it the other way, we can see that Maryland, Colorado, and Alabama, we are way behind Kroger, and these are opportunities where we need to invest in these markets. We need to make a change. We need to, maybe it's renovate stores, maybe it's adjust pricing. But these are three markets where, we know that if we invest money, we can increase our market share. We may also want to just double check our market share in those markets to make sure that we don't already have 95%, in which case there wouldn't be much we can do. And we can see that the market share is the highest in Massachusetts, where actually I live. And if we go down the line, I don't see any of those markets as our upper echelon market share, so we're clear to do an analysis on that. So now that we've focused in and we understand kind of where the market opportunity is, I just want to take a second to think about what we just did in kind of legacy ways of doing analytics versus kind of a new way of doing things, in that previously you would never really know, you could drill in on market share and understand where it was low and where it was high, but it wouldn't tell you if it was a good opportunity to invest, right? You could throw all the money you want at a market, but it doesn't tell you whether or not it'll actually have an impact. But this correlation analysis tells us, how we correlate against these external metrics, which actually gives you insight into where you can have an impact, which is very, very powerful. So on the next grid, what we'll look at is, so by market, we're looking at market share. And now that we know the markets that we want to go into, we can narrow our focus. So let's go in here and pick the three, Alabama, Colorado, and Maryland. So now let's focus in on these three markets, right? So we see what the market share is for the actuals, but now what we want to do in Tidemark is predict based on these external factors and based on history in using a machine learning algorithm called a linear regression, what the future is, right? So we do that the same way we did the correlation using the Tidemark business method. When I click run, it's going to push this data through an algorithm that's going to predict out the future. And just a quick kind of primer on machine learning versus kind of standard statistical analysis. If we all remember back to college in our statistics classes, you know, you can do linear regressions and you can do multivariable regression, but for those, you actually have to determine what the variables are going to be up front. So you can push them into the model and see if it's statistically significant and go from there, whereas machine learning, you put in all your variables into the machine and it can pick and choose and figure out what the important variables are, and they get smarter over time by using those variables, right? So you don't have to determine upfront what those variables are. So now that we've run that business method, I'm going to refresh the grid, and now we can see the prediction using the machine learning. And we can visualize it and take a look if we can see any trends based on it. So the machine is telling us that in Q1, you know, Colorado is going to be down 2015 Q1. It's also going to be down 2016. So there might be some seasonality there that we need to dig into. But now that we have this data point and we know what the machine is telling us, we're not just going to sit back and kind of wait for this reality to happen to us. There are all sorts of levers within the business that we can pull and push to actually impact the business, right? So things I mentioned, you know, making investments, rehabbing stores, opening stores, closing stores. So there are things that we can do to impact the business. So what we're going to do is take this machine learning forecast and actually make it the basis for our financial forecast. All right, so if we go to the next panel, we can see in this panel, we're looking still inherited the three markets that we're looking at. We see total predicted sales. We have the machine learned market share, so this is what the machine is telling us. We have predicted sales based on that machine learned market share. But now we have a what if scenario, right? So this is a number that we can play around with. So for instance, if we think we can increase market share in these markets by say 2%, I can do that using our visual planning functionality. So I'm going to bump it up by 2%, click apply, and save. And now if these go up by 2%, we have a new variable, right? So this is our new what if sales, and the impact of that change is actually $14 million in revenue in these three markets, right? So we're taking that machine learning forecast, we're using it as the basis for our real financial forecast to get to a projected sales number. So we're not just doing it on gut feel, we're not just doing it based on historical trends, we're actually using this machine learning to actually impact the financial forecast and better inform what we're planning. And from here, you know, we can put in a variance explanation about what we did, you know, bumping it up by 2%. We can share this with people within our organization. You'll notice that annotations and collaborations have moved, so they're now on the left-hand side of the screen, a little bit more prominent and easy to find. So if I want to collaborate with somebody within my organization, I can do that here, and I can tell our co-founder, Christian Yorke, you know, share this with him. This will send him a link to bring into this analysis. So that, you know, just to summarize what we've seen so far, we've taken this operational data from external data sources. We've kind of melded it together with our internal data and our sales data to figure out markets where there's business opportunity. We've then taken that data, run machine learning to understand what the prediction will be out into the future. And then we've used that machine learning forecast to inform what our real financial forecast or budget would be using this what if analysis. All right, so pretty powerful in comparison to kind of a standard forecast, standard budgeting process, to be able to bring in external data to better inform what the number will be going forward. And obviously we know it's not perfect, so we give you the ability to make changes to it and adjust it as you see fit. So there are other products out there that can do this. There's SAS and there's, I forget what the one from IBM is, but there are products that can do this. But what we think sets us apart is really the usability of it, running these business methods, being able to visualize it in these reports. And now what I want to show you is how we would push that out to the edges of the organization. All right, so now that we know that this data matters, we know how it's impacting the business, what can we do to push it out to the people who are actually making decisions in the business? The people that day to day are actually, in this case, selling the groceries or stocking the shelves. And to do that, we have a whole bunch of visualizations where we can push it out to the field. So here we're looking at market share data, we're comparing ourselves against Kroger's, and we're looking at it by region. So for instance, if I was the Midwest regional manager, I can now go in and just click and tap and see all of my markets here, right? And see where opportunity is. And it looks like, Nebraska and Kentucky are good market opportunities. And from there, I can click down, and maybe I don't want to look at it by location. Maybe I want to look at it, and I think I can go all the way down to the store, right? So within Kentucky, we have 2 stores. But maybe in Kentucky, I don't want to look at it by store. I want to look at it by department, right? So what is our market share in packaged meat versus frozen food versus dry grocery? And in a very visual way, I can interact with the data, figure out what matters, and do kind of my own analysis to better inform the decisions I'm making. Right, so we can push it out to the field so that people can make better decisions in real time. We could look at it as a trend. Right, are there any funky trends going on in the Midwest? Looks like Nebraska has some stuff going on there. So we might want to dig into that and look at which store. There's only one store, so maybe we collaborate with the owner of the Omaha store. Maybe that's James Sherritt. Right, have a conversation all in one place. So we feel this is super powerful to put the ability to run machine learning and statistical analysis in the hands of the business, and then take that data and push it out to the people at the edges of the organization who actually are making the decisions, right? So very, very powerful. From here, so that's kind of what we wanted to show for the Tidemark Compete. We'll open it up for questions after I go through the verticals. So next, I'm going to jump into our verticals. So in this release, we're releasing 3 new verticals. It's retail, it's insurance, and it's hospitality. We've kind of touched a little bit on retail there. There's a lot more that goes into it. In each one of these, we're not going to spend too much time. Obviously, we know that not everyone on the call is part of hospitality, retail, or insurance. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes on each, and only on hospitality and insurance, just to give you a little primer on what's included. Now, we already have some packaged applications, packaged processes that are out into the market around labor and expense planning, subscription economy. We have a higher ed packaged application that's very popular in the market. So here, this is our verticals tent. And as Emeka mentioned, the whole kind of theme behind packaged applications is twofold. One, it's time to value, right? So we've done a whole bunch of implementations over many years. There's years and years of expertise within Tidemark that we've baked into these package processes, right? So we're putting these best practices into an application, packaging them up, and using them as a starting point for the implementation. The second part of it is, as Emeka mentioned also, is time to value, right? So we're not starting every implementation with a blank slate. We're starting with a series of reports and metrics and calculations as a starting point so we can take that, configure it to meet your needs, and get you up and running really, really quickly, right? So first, I'm going to start off in the hospitality package process. And within this process, there's a whole bunch of things that we can do. We can do analytics, we can do corporate planning, franchise planning, all the different types of things that you might do if you're a hospitality company. But for the demo today, I'm going to go into hotel planning. And what we're looking at here is a structured process. So this is what we've defined as the package process for hospitality planning. And there's really 4 pieces to this process. The first is the administrative piece. So as the FP&A team, we can go in, we can load data. Maybe we want to load our most recent actuals or load some external data. Maybe you have foreign countries and you want to maintain your FX rates. We can maintain hierarchies and master data. Maybe there's a few stores that you want to rearrange for next year and you want to do a reorg. We can do that in this maintain hierarchies. We can also seed the data. Typically, customers will seed data with either prior actuals or prior forecasts, and we can do that here in this administrative section. The second piece is where the core planning happens. So we're inputting revenue, we're inputting expenses, we're also putting in corporate planning as well as external expenses. And with corporate planning, so there's kind of three pieces to hospitality planning. The first is at the hotel level. So what is the revenue, what is the expense at the hotel level? Then there's corporate planning, which is, G&A functions, finance, HR, marketing, executives. And the third is what we're calling external expense, where there's one person in the organization who's responsible for a piece of the P&L. So in this instance, it's utilities. So there's one person in charge of planning utilities across the entire organization, and that person has their own panel where they'll put that in and it'll flow through into the hotel P&L. So when you think about how to do hospitality planning, a lot of it stems from the rented room. Right? So if you rent a room, there's going to be revenue associated with it, and there'll also be a whole host of expenses. So we have this concept of revenue per rented room and cost per rented room, where if you put in a new room, it'll flow through the P&L and put in all the revenue and costs associated with that room. So it's a whole bunch of ratios that we use here for planning. The third section is we do what-if planning. Our customers have told us that they really want to be able to play around with the data to almost goal seek to a number where they can go in and say, what if we increased the daily rate from $80 to $81 on Tuesdays in the second half of the year? What would the impact to revenue be? What would be the impact to the bottom line? So we enable that through this what-if plan. And then finally, we do some reporting around hotel analytics and hotel performance. So for the demo, I'm going to jump right into daily revenue planning. And I'm going to sign in as the Miami owner. Right, so if I'm the general manager of the Miami store, this is what I'm going to see when I log into Tidemark to do my revenue plan. And you'll notice the key metrics here that we're letting them update are rooms occupied and average daily rate. So those are the key metrics that general managers have an impact on and that they plan for the organization. And these metrics lead to room revenue, which eventually leads to RevPAR. And RevPAR, revenue per available room, which is a key hospitality metric that everyone measures themselves on. It's something that's very important to the application. So what this person can do, they log in, they can change rooms occupied, ADR, but they're not doing it in a vacuum. They're doing it in the context of these events. Right, so the thing that impacts the business would be certain events. So we're looking at New Year's Day, Martin Luther King, Valentine's Day shifts by one day this year. Maybe we need to make an adjustment on rooms occupied or ADR based on that. Maybe it's a sporting event. It looks like WrestleMania is happening this year, but it didn't happen last year. So we may want to bump up our rooms occupied there, and I'll do that right here. So maybe I know that will increase our rooms occupied for this weekend 25%. So click apply and save. And now we can see the impact to revenue there. I can change ADR, and then I can put in commentary, right? And I can go in, and maybe for WrestleMania, I put in increase by 10, 20%. Right, so we're actually adding context to the plan. So that if somebody leaves, or if you want to figure out why you planned the way you did, you can always come back and take a look at those comments. From there, what I'll show you is and let me go back to the process. So you'll notice the process map is a little bit different in the new user experience. It's up here at the left, at the top. With this arrow, and I'll take you into the consolidated P&L because this is really the goal of a hospitality company is to get to this P&L. So for all of your metrics, where do we stand from a profit and loss standpoint all the way down to net income? So this is taking the corporate plan, taking the hotel plan, as well as the external expenses, bringing it into one place to show the impact on the business. And then from there, you can do all sorts of analytics on it, right? So if we want to understand, who's going to grow this year based on the budget that we just did, who's not going to grow, we're looking here at room revenue. So budget versus prior actual. So this is showing, based on our budget that we did for this year, who's increasing room revenue and who's not. And there's all sorts of interesting dimensionality that we can use. And here in the POC, what we built out were things like collateral in region and ownership and renovated. So we can segment in Tidemark with multiple hierarchies. There's unlimited dimensions and hierarchies where we can go in and say, okay, how is my budget doing versus prior year based on hotels that have been renovated, right? So here we can see that the hotels that have been renovated recently are going up 5% in revenue. Those that haven't been renovated are going up 5.2%. So we might want to drill in on that and look at the not renovated hotels, and they're happening in Seattle and New York City. And we might want to talk to those owners to see if they really think that their budget's going to go up. So there's really an endless amount of ways that you can segment your, in this case, hotels, whether it's, are you near an airport or not? Do you have a restaurant in your hotel or not? Do you have a business center or not? So there's all sorts of ways that you can slice and dice the data to figure out, what your performance is. So this is budget versus prior actual. Once the actuals start rolling in next year and you're doing variance analysis, actual to plan, you can better understand how you're doing. One example from a customer that we have is, they're introducing a new line of hotels with a new brand. And they want to be able to understand, how those brands are performing. And with Tidemark, it's just a new hierarchy on the hotel dimension, and they can slice and dice and do all sorts of reporting around that new brand to better understand it. So that's a way high-level overview of hospitality. If it is interesting to you, we encourage you to reach out to us. We can go through a more in-depth demo. We can show you all the building blocks and kind of how everything comes together and some of the more interesting things that we've built into it. But this gives you a sense of what we're doing with these package processes. We're pre-building all of the metrics. We're pre-building reporting. We're building in calculations and allocations that we can reuse from customer to customer and then configure to meet your needs however you might do business. So that's hospitality. Next, I'm going to go into our insurance vertical package process. So in a similar way, this package process has a whole bunch of things that we can do if we were an insurance company. We can analyze our key metrics. We can plan our expenses. We'll show you some premium modeling that we can do, general financial reporting, salary planning, and so forth. So there's a lot that we can do here in this package process. For the demo, I'm going to jump into metrics and analytics. And these are the steps that we've defined here in this process. So I'm going to jump into the storyline. And you'll see, because this is insurance, we have different metrics. So it's not, obviously revenue matters and expense matters, but in this case, so does policy count, total policy premiums, new policies, earned premium, and so forth. So the metrics change, but now we're still giving you the availability to do analytics on this data. The dimensionality has also changed. We can look at it by company. All right, so if I'm segmented into various companies, we can look at the data that way. We have it segmented also by line of business, product line. So how am I doing in my life versus my property and casualty, all the way down to the actual products that we're selling, auto, homeowners, farm insurance. So this storyline will update real time with the data as I select it. Finally, down to the agencies. So maybe some of these policies in our premium are coming from our agencies in different regions. we can actually drill down into the actual district to the actual agency to see where the data is coming from. So here, in a very visual way, we can see kind of how we're doing as a company. You'll see the areas where we're included in those markets here. So from there, what we can do is, based on that dimensionality that we showed you, we can do, again, some variance analysis. So actual versus budget, how are we doing, right? So here our key metrics are active policies, new policies, claims, and so forth. And now we can, based on the dimensionality, drill down. So how am I doing in property and casualty versus life, actual versus budget? And if I drill in on this, it'll take me down that line of business hierarchy. And I can see and easily identify kind of where things are going wrong. So direct, it's all direct. Keep going. We will see that really the issue is with auto, right? $115,000 variance. That might be where I want to dig into auto. And when I click on it, it's going to bring us to that kind of sub-level below auto. And now, these are the different, is it motorcycle, is it trucking, is it personal? But now I can pivot and take a look at it by different dimension. Maybe I want to look at it by region, so I can see which regions are performing and which ones aren't. So I can easily traverse kind of up and down the hierarchy to better understand variances, and it's happening. It looks like Tennessee is the biggest variance. All right, so now I want to dig into auto in Tennessee. And now that I have this information, what's the logical next step? I want to act on it. I want to make a change. I want to update my premium planning model. So to do that, we've provided a link as an action, the same way that we ran the Tidemark business method. We're going to use this link to take us to another step within our process. And in this instance, it's going to take us to our premium modeling process. Right, and so this is going to actually take us into a separate piece of the application where we can do planning. And here, now that I know Tennessee is really where I want to focus, if I spell it correctly, so I'm going to focus on Tennessee. And what we're looking at here is, by product, the active policy count, average written premium, total policy calculation, and then for each company, what our budget is. So for instance, in the general insurance company, I might want to go into Tennessee, and because I was below budget, I might want to update my budget and take it down. Right? So the active policy count was too high. Obviously, this is a broad stroke, and this is probably not how you'd actually do the budget, but I'm just going to adjust everything down by 3%. Or maybe I know that the total number of policies is going to be 80,000, and I want to distribute it to each product using the current distribution. When I click Apply, it's going to do that distribution. When I click Save, it's going to make that update to the plan. Right? So now I have a new total premium calculation, and my model has been updated, my forecast has been updated. So that next period, things should be more in line with what I planned. So at a high level, that's what we want to show you from our insurance package process. There's a whole lot more that's built into here. There's a lot of calculations, related to number of months that have elapsed. It kind of models out into the future all of your policies and your earned premium. But that's what we want to show you today, the analytics and how it lends to more informed planning and budgeting. So from there, I think I'll hand it back to Emeka. And I think next we'll do Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
So we'd like to open it up to questions. So if you've got any question, any comments, just feel free to put it into the chat window, and we'll address it. Just give you a minute to do that. So I see the same question we got the last time we did this was around sourcing the data for Tidemark Compete, where we showed competitive information and market information being pulled into Tidemark. So yes, the data source will differ by industry. For the one we showed for retail, the data source was obviously from Nielsen, which is a provider of proprietary information, competitive information for the retail space. And to use that within Tidemark, if you've got a subscription with, if you're a retailer and you've got a subscription with Nielsen, we can get that data in and use it. Similarly, if you're in other industries and you've got data sources that are popular for getting market insights for your industry, we can also pull those in. And the other data you saw, like GDP data, data from food consumption and alcohol consumption, that's all public data, that's government data that we can automatically pull in for you on updates, so you can use that alongside your planning, budgeting, and forecasting efforts. And there's a quick question here about the package processes and what it really, how easy it is to modify those if you need to do that for your organization. And yes, like we said, the package processes are just an initial starting point. Instead of you, as you would typically get with most software vendors, getting an empty box, we give you a box that's already full of best practices. So like Mike was showing, predefined processes, predefined metrics, predefined grids, predefined analytics. So and that's a lot of best practices that we've seen from working in some of these verticals. So hopefully that gets you going most of the way. But if you need to modify that, like change some metrics, add new metrics, and extend that, that's completely doable. That's something that we can work with you on. But at least you get a starting point. You get to value much quicker with a package process than if you were starting from scratch to try to get your instance up for your organization. Well, thank you very much for making time to spending time with us and listening to our webinar about a fall release. So this should be available if you're a customer of Tidemark already for you to preview this month before we get it out to your production environment. And obviously, if you're not a customer of Tidemark and would love to talk with us, we would love to hear from you and continue the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, and hope to talk to you again next time.